plus 35 in 19 minutes coming off the bench. After 8 months without playing a single competitive basketball game, if you handed that number to a scout with no names attached, they would tell you it was a typo. That kind of plus-minus, in that kind of context, a return from an extended injury layoff, playing bench minutes, international competition, does not happen in real basketball. Except it did happen. And the player it happened to, the one who walked onto a FIBA court for the first time in nearly a year and immediately became the most efficient offensive force on the entire Team USA roster, was Caitlin Clark. And then, less than 24 hours later, the coaches and teammates sharing that floor with her decided they were done finding her the ball. What unfolded at the FIBA Americas tournament is one of the most layered and revealing stories of Caitlin Clark's career. Not because of what she did on the court, though what she did on the court was genuinely historic, but because of what was done around her off of it. 5 FIBA records shattered against Senegal, 12 assists in 19 minutes, 0 turnovers, a plus-minus that reads like someone mistyped the score, and then, in the Puerto Rico game, the offense went completely dark. Not because of the zone defense Puerto Rico threw at them, not because Clark lost her edge overnight. The offense went dark because the players surrounding her made deliberate, repeated choices that kept the ball out of her hands, while the most invested and passionate crowd in women's basketball watched from the stands and figured out exactly what was happening before the quarter was even over. Today we are pulling back the curtain on all of it, the freeze-out, the coaching politics that trace directly back to the Indiana Fever sideline, the viral moment that broke the internet mid-game, and the post-game response from Clark herself that nobody who has spent 2 years watching this league's drama could have predicted. If this is the kind of breakdown you've been waiting for, the one that actually connects the dots instead of dancing around them, hit that like button right now. It is the single biggest signal you can send to the algorithm that this content is worth pushing out, and it keeps us digging into the stories everyone else is afraid to touch. To understand Puerto Rico, you have to understand Senegal. And to understand Senegal, you have to understand exactly what 8 months away from competitive basketball actually means for a player's game. This was not a standard off-season rest. 8 months is the kind of absence that permanently alters trajectories. Players come back from breaks that long and something has shifted. The hesitation on reads, the rust on timing with new teammates, the gap between what the mind sees and what the body executes. Clark checked in off the bench in the first quarter against Senegal, and within minutes, it was clear that none of those concerns applied to her whatsoever. She was reading Team USA's half-court sets before defenses even finished setting up. She was finding cutters that her own teammates had not yet realized were open. Ryan Howard was getting layup looks, off Clark passes that looked almost unfair. The kind of delivery where you watch the clip 3 times trying to reconstruct how she saw the lane before any other player on the floor had processed the developing movement. Kiki Iriafen was catching the ball in position to score without creating anything for herself. Monique Billings was finishing possessions she had barely worked for. Kelsey Plum had operating room she does not typically find in the half court. That is what Clark does at her highest level. She does not simply play point guard. She reorganizes the geometry of the entire floor. Defenders are forced to account simultaneously for her pull-up range, her ability to attack the rim, her vision as a passer, and her gravity as a shooting threat. The moment a defense commits to neutralizing any single one of those options, gaps explode everywhere else, and Clark is already processing where those gaps are going to be before the defense has even finished making the wrong choice. The lineup that Coach Kara Lawson put on the floor in the second quarter, Clark running point alongside Howard, Plum, Iriafen, and Billings, was the single best 5-player unit Team USA fielded that day. Sharp, fast, seamlessly connected. Lawson herself told reporters afterward that it took the team to a different level. Her own words, the head coach looked at what that group produced and publicly acknowledged it, elevated the entire squad. Clark's final stat line for those 19 minutes, 12 assists, 0 turnovers, a steal, a block, and a plus-minus of plus 35. FIBA did not put her face on every billboard, every program, and every promotional thumbnail for the tournament because of a marketing decision that outran the basketball. They did it because they understood exactly what they had on their hands. After the Senegal game, everyone in the building understood it too. This is why the setup for the Puerto Rico game felt so loaded with expectation. You had the most efficient offensive player in the tournament. You had the most effective five-player unit on the roster built around her at point. You had a global audience that had watched the Senegal highlights loop across every platform, that had seen 5 records fall in 19 minutes, that was locked in and waiting for more. Iowa jerseys filled the arena, Indiana jerseys. A dedicated camera operator tracked Clark's every movement from warm-ups through tip-off. The energy in that building before the opening possession was the same electricity you feel right before a concert when the lights drop and the crowd already knows who is coming out. These fans had not come to watch Team USA in the abstract. They had come to see Caitlin Clark run an offense, and they had every reason to believe that was exactly what they were about to get. The coaching staff had watched a plus 35 in 19 minutes. They had heard Lawson's own words about the best lineup on the floor. They had 12 assists and 0 turnovers as their reference point. The only open question heading into the Puerto Rico game was whether they would actually use that information. What happened when the game started was stunning in how completely it erased everything Senegal had proven. The pulse that Clark gave the offense, the quick swings, the open cuts, the transition looks generated by her tempo, was just gone. Not reduced, gone. Team USA was grinding through half-court possessions that went nowhere against a Puerto Rico zone that pressed and made things difficult, yes, but was not the actual source of the problem. Puerto Rico's zone was a factor. The real problem was on the Team USA bench and in the specific choices being made by the players who were supposed to be sharing the floor and the ball with Caitlin Clark. And those choices did not look random. They looked like a pattern, and the crowd in that arena, the same crowd that had packed the building to see Clark run, began to understand the pattern in real time. The energy started to deflate. The building, so electric an hour earlier, began to feel like the air had been slowly let out. Because the player they came to see was standing 30 feet from the basket with her hands ready, waiting for a pass that possession after possession simply was not coming. Before we break down what was actually happening on that Puerto Rico court, drop a comment below right now. Do you think Kara Lawson was genuinely in the dark about how to use Clark, or was something else entirely driving those rotation decisions? Because the answer to that question gets significantly more complicated once you factor in who was sitting on the Team USA bench during that game. And we are getting to that in just a moment. Carla Booth was playing full hero ball in Puerto Rico, and there is no other way to describe it. Catching the ball on the wing, holding while the defense recovered and reset, pulling up off the dribble into traffic, forcing her way into contact and contested situations when a wide-open Clark was standing on the perimeter with feet set and hands ready, not once, not twice. Possession after possession. The objectively correct basketball read, the one that Booth would have to work hard to miss, was right there, and Booth consistently did not take it. Then there was Angel Reese. Multiple possessions where Clark was the open player, where the defense had shifted in a direction that left Clark with daylight, where finding her was the play. Reese did not make it. Fans watching the broadcast in real time caught it immediately. Clips were circulating on social media before the quarter was even over. People watching were not confused. They were furious, because this was not the kind of situation where you chalk it up to the chaos of a fast game and a couple of difficult reads. This was a repeating pattern across the course of an entire game, and the contrast with the day before made it impossible to ignore. Against Senegal, Clark would receive the ball and the offense would have a heartbeat before the defense even finished setting. Against Puerto Rico, the ball would go to Booth or Reese, the possession would slow, the shot clock would bleed, and passes would go sideways instead of forward. Every single time Clark did touch the ball in the Puerto Rico game, something positive happened. A kickout that moved the defense, a drive that drew a foul, a skip pass that found an open shooter, a coast-to-coast run off a steal that generated an and-one opportunity, taking the layup off the glass while absorbing contact to the head, which, at this point in Clark's career, might as well be a recurring feature of every game she ever plays. She was making things happen on both ends of the floor, even while being actively ignored on offense. She got a block. She got a steal. She competed for the entire 40 minutes regardless of what her offensive involvement looked like, and the game film on her offensive touches tells the whole story without needing any editorial interpretation. Clark has the ball. Offense lives. Clark stands on the perimeter watching someone else dribble into a double team. Offense flatlines. That is not an opinion. That is just what possession-by-possession replay shows. Clark's reaction to all of it was the most telling thing on that court. She did not force the issue. She did not wave her arms or demand touches or let the frustration leak out in ways that give a coaching staff grounds to pull a player for disrupting team chemistry. She also did not check out and stop competing. At one point coming back into the game, she did not even glance in Reese's direction. No nod, no acknowledgement, no forced smile or performative teammate energy. Just eyes forward, getting into position, doing the job. That kind of controlled detachment is not accidental. That is a player who has assessed the situation, made a deliberate choice about how to respond, and decided the game film will do the talking. And then came the moment that ended the debate about what the crowd was watching. Clark was going down the bench line during a stoppage, the standard energy-up routine, fist bumps and shoulder taps, going player to player. When she reached Angel Reese, there was nothing. No hand offered, no eye contact, no acknowledgement that Reese existed in that moment. The clip was everywhere within minutes. Millions of views across every major platform before the game was even finished. Now, reasonable people can debate what any single moment of sideline body language means in isolation. Context matters. Maybe it means less than the internet decided it meant. But when you stack that clip on top of Reese looking Clark off on multiple possessions, on top of Booth holding the ball while Clark stood open, on top of an offense that died every time Clark was not dictating tempo, the moment tells a story whether the players intended it to or not, and the fans who had packed that arena specifically to watch Clark had already been telling themselves that story for 3 quarters. If our coverage has been the place you come to get past the surface and understand what is actually happening in this league, consider joining the channel as a member. Your support is what makes it possible to keep doing this kind of analysis instead of just reacting to whatever the algorithm decides to push today. The post-game press conference revealed the full picture. A reporter went directly at Kara Lawson and asked her a straight question about Caitlin Clark. Lawson responded by describing herself as being in fact-finding mode, still working to figure out player combinations and rotations. After Clark had broken 5 FIBA records the day before, after a plus 35 in 19 minutes of bench time, after the head coach herself had told reporters that the lineup with Clark running point took the team to a different level. What fact is left to find? The fact scored 12 assists with 0 turnovers and made every other player on the floor with her significantly more effective. You have already found the fact. Choosing not to acknowledge it publicly, refusing to say Clark's name in a press conference where her name was the direct subject of a reporter's question, is not a neutral response. It is a deliberate choice, and it is a choice that has broader implications than a single post-game deflection. Because sitting on the Team USA bench during that Puerto Rico game was Stephanie White, Clark's head coach with the Indiana Fever, and Fever fans spent an entire WNBA season watching Stephanie White's coaching philosophy applied to Caitlin Clark up close. White's system consistently pushed Clark away from being the primary ball handler and offensive facilitator, the role where Clark's value is exponential. It asked her to play off-ball in situations where her decision-making and vision as a primary passer is where she creates the most damage. It limited her reads, constrained her ability to dictate pace, and kept the ball out of her hands in ways that made the Fever offense less efficient than the talent on that roster should have produced, game after game. The Indiana Fever had the most marketable and arguably most impactful offensive player in the entire league, and the coaching staff kept engineering situations that minimized her involvement rather than maximizing it. And now that same coaching philosophy, embedded in an assistant coach with a direct line of influence to the Team USA sideline, was sitting on the bench during the exact game where Clark was being frozen out. That is not a coincidence you can easily wave away. Put it all together. A head coach publicly refusing to acknowledge Clark's name or performance the day after a historic game. An assistant coach whose entire system is architecturally designed to limit Clark's role as primary facilitator. Teammates making repeated choices to keep the ball out of Clark's hands even when she was the obvious and correct read. And a player who had just proven, with the entire world watching, that she is the most impactful offensive weapon on that roster by a significant margin. You do not need a conspiracy theory to see the problem. The problem is just sitting there. If this breakdown is reaching you in a way that most WNBA coverage doesn't, share this video with someone who has been following this story. One share is how this content reaches the people asking the exact same questions who haven't found a channel willing to answer them honestly. Clark walked into that press room knowing every reporter in the room was looking for a reaction. One raised eyebrow, one loaded pause, one carefully constructed sentence about ball movement or certain teammates failing to find the open player, and the entire internet would have gone to work for her. She had the ammunition. She had the factual basis to say something that would have dominated the sports conversation for a week. She left all of it on the table. She talked about the team. She said the offense felt a little clunky and that all the teams were supporting each other. She pointed to Puerto Rico's zone as something they needed to be better at attacking. She praised Paige Buchers for playing well. She called Puerto Rico's crowd incredible and their effort impressive. She said the team would figure it out. When a reporter asked her directly whether the mistakes came from Puerto Rico's defense or were self-inflicted, Clark did not dodge the question. She said it was mostly self-inflicted. Think about that. She took ownership on behalf of a team that had spent 40 minutes not giving her the ball. She identified missed defensive coverages and foul trouble as contributing factors, not Angel Reese's reads, not Booth's shot selection, not Lawson's rotation choices. Just clean, honest, team-first accountability from a 23-year-old who had earned the right to say something completely different. We have watched what happens when star players decide not to take the high road. Kevin Durant's burner accounts firing back at critics, Kyrie Irving turning a press conference into a week-long distraction, Jimmy Butler forcing his way out of Minnesota and making sure the organization heard about it on the way out. Ben Simmons turning a single playoff moment into an entire season of standoff that poisoned a franchise. The playbook when a player feels disrespected or frozen out is almost always the same. Let the frustration show. Let the media do the work. Force the organization's hand. Caitlin Clark is 23 years old. She is the most talked about basketball player on the planet right now, men's or women's. She has absorbed cheap shots, hard fouls, and media narratives designed to diminish her since the first day she stepped into the WNBA. She sat at that podium after being iced out by her own teammates and talked about how the team would figure it out. Not her stats, not her usage rate, not her touches. Winning. She was the only person at that podium actually focused on winning. That contrast between what Clark chose to say and what everyone around her had been doing for 40 minutes is the full story of this Puerto Rico game. And what happens next is the question that matters. 19 minutes against Senegal established the baseline, 5 records, plus 35. An offense operating on a different level than anything else Team USA produced that day. The real test is whether the people with authority over lineup decisions and player usage will finally stop engineering situations that minimize Clark's impact and start building around what she has proven she can do. The opponents going forward are more disciplined, faster, and will punish every moment the system fails to deploy its best offensive weapon efficiently. The question was never whether Caitlin Clark can change a game. She answered that in 19 minutes. The question is whether the coaches and teammates who control her touches are finally ready to stop protecting their own roles long enough to find out what happens when they actually let her run. We are going to keep tracking this story because it is not close to over. Subscribe and hit the notification bell. The next chapter in this is coming fast, and we will have it broken down before anyone else touches it.